Hello and welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Choy. Let's start with the headlines. With the number of MERS recoveries almost doubling the number of deaths from the virus, Korea now shifts its focus to prevention. Meanwhile, Samsung Vice Chair Lee Jae-yong issued a public apology as Samsung Medical Center is considered the center of the virus and vowed to prevent such cases in the future. At the parliamentary interpellation session, Korea's health minister was at the center of scrutiny for the government's disastrous initial response to the MERS outbreak. Fueled by uncertainty about the future and worries over outstanding debts, more and more Koreans are dumping their money into savings and spending less, pushing the country's savings rate to reach a 17-year high in the first quarter of this year. We start with the latest on the MERS outbreak in Korea. 3 more patients were confirmed earlier today, raising total to 175 cases nationwide. For the details, let's go straight to our Kim Ji-yeon, who is standing by the news center. Ji-yeon, can you tell us about these new cases?
Well, Daniel, details have emerged about one of the patients confirmed earlier today. Patient 173, who is 70 years old, is believed to have contracted the virus after being in close contact with patient 76. However, she was not placed under quarantine or isolation until 9 days later when she began showing symptoms of the disease. Now, the Seoul metropolitan government is on alert and has launched an investigation to stop further cases from popping up. An estimated 7,500 people, including some 60 medical workers who have been in close contact with patient 173, are currently being monitored. The patient had reportedly been suffering from pneumonia, a common symptom among patients identified as super spreaders of the MERS virus.
Just when the number of cases seem to be dropping off, Jen, do health officials believe this patient can lead to fresh cases, meaning we may have another super spreader in our midst?
Well, Daniel, we can't be certain at the moment, but authorities are not excluding that possibility because the case resembles that of other super spreaders. Not only is the patient suffering from pneumonia, but also it took longer to confirm the infection, which was also the case with patients 1, 6, 14, 15, and 16, all of whom turned out to be super spreaders. The health ministry said earlier today that it took more than 8 days for the 5 super spreaders to be diagnosed with the virus, while the other 93 or so patients it studied took an average around 4.5 days to confirm.
Once again, we're reminded we should not panic, but at the same time, we should not let our guards down until the outbreak comes and the country is declared MERS-free, Jian. But it seems that measures are on the right path as fewer numbers of confirmed cases and deaths are being reported with each passing day.
That's right, Daniel. Well, the number of people who have recovered from MERS and were discharged from hospitals have almost doubled the number of MERS deaths. The country's first confirmed patient tested negative for the virus earlier today, but is still waiting for additional testing to be fully cleared. Meanwhile, more than 1,000 people have been released from quarantine or isolation from their homes today, and only 6 schools and preschools nationwide are temporarily closed due to the outbreak. Back to you, Daniel.
Thank you so much for that report, Jian. Now, in the wake of recent events here in Korea, Lee Jae-yong, the heir apparent to the Samsung business empire, issued a rare apology to the public this morning, as nearly half of all MERS patients came from the conglomerate's hospital. Our Han Da-eun has this story.
Samsung Medical Center failed to contain the spread of the MERS virus. We have caused too much pain and concern for the Korean people. I extend my sincerest apologies.
The Samsung scion, Lee Jae-yong, deeply bowed his head before the press and the public on Tuesday. The rare apology comes as Samsung Medical Center became the center of MERS transmissions in Korea, accounting for nearly half of the total number of MERS patients in the country. Some 80 people are believed to have been infected from patient 14, the super spreader, at the hospital's emergency ward. An embarrassment for Samsung Group's hospital, which was touted as one of the nation's finest hospitals. Lee seemed determined to make immediate changes.
In the wake of this incident, we've decided to improve our medical facilities and environment, including the ER, and build more negative pressure isolation rooms to make our patients feel at ease.
Lee went on to pledge full support for future infectious disease prevention efforts.
We will actively support disease prevention efforts and vaccine development to better deal with future disease infections.
In response to questions from reporters on whether the Middle Eastern virus will continue to spread in Korea, President of Samsung Hospital Song Jae-hoon said, although the battle with MERS will not end immediately, it's likely to wind down from this point on, with just a sporadic number of cases occurring now. Han-daeun, Arirang News.
The MERS outbreak continued to dominate the parliamentary interpellation session, now into its third day at the National Assembly. Lawmakers from rival parties were united in their criticism of the government's failure to contain the virus early on. Our Park Ji-won tells us more.
Facing a barrage of criticism at Tuesday's interpellation session, Health Minister Moon Hyung-pyo apologized for the government's failure to swiftly deal with the outbreak during the initial stages.
The public's concerns are growing daily due to the MERS outbreak. As health minister, what would you like to say to the public?
I'm very sorry that the ministry has failed to swiftly stabilize the situation in the early stages. The ministry did not have enough information about the disease at that time.
The minister said the government referred to a simple manual distributed by World Health Organization in the initial stages, failing to take Korea's unique hospital culture into consideration, which caused the virus to spread quickly. The health minister added that officials have taken measures to prevent the further spread of the virus, including shutting down entire hospital wards when necessary. However, former presidential candidate and former chairman of the main opposition An Chol-soo pressed the minister to step down from his post.
Don't you have any intentions to resign from your post voluntarily?
I am not avoiding responsibility in any way, but I think now is the time for me to carry out my duties to quickly contain the current MERS situation.
Government measures to counter the drought in the nation's eastern and central regions, estimated to be the most severe in 42 years, as well as urgent educational tasks like expanding the nation's childcare services, were other topics of the session. The four-day interpellation session will conclude on Wednesday, with its final session to focus mainly on the nation's political issues. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
In other news, the U.S. government has thrown its moral support behind Korea and Japan's efforts to improve their bilateral relations. This comes after the leaders of both countries attended ceremonies at each other's embassies on Monday to mark the 50th anniversary of normalized relations. Our Connie Kim shares some experts' views on whether the apparent thaw could signal a new chapter in bilateral relations.
Washington welcomed a possible indication of improving Korea-Japan ties. Korean President Park Geun-hye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe both expressed hope for better relations at separate ceremonies marking the 50th anniversary of normalization of diplomatic ties hosted by each other's embassies on Monday. The U.S. State Department spokesperson said on the same day that Washington welcomes Seoul and Tokyo's agreement to participate in the events and their efforts to boost bilateral relations. The view was echoed by many American experts. Previous spokesman for the U.S. State Department, Alan Bromberg, said the two leaders are heading towards mending trade relations. Japan's refusal to apologize for its sexual enslavement of thousands of Korean women during World War II has been one of the most contentious issues between the two countries. Former National Foreign Policy Advisor Victor Cha said President Park and Prime Minister Abe's visit to each other's embassies indicated the possibility for a Korea-Japan summit should trilateral summit talks among Korea, China, and Japan take place in Seoul this year. However, experts say historical issues must be addressed in order for Seoul-Tokyo relations to improve. Dennis Halpin of Johns Hopkins University cited that Abe has taken a bolder stance regarding its past sexual enslavement issues after returning from his Washington trip in April, and that Abe could visit the highly controversial Yasukuni War Shrine that honors several Class A criminals. Analysts say whether or not Abe apologizes for Japan's wartime atrocities in his August statement, marking the end of the 70th anniversary of World War II, could affect the future of bilateral relations. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Staying on the topic of those relations, Korea and Japan will hold the third round of talks on Tuesday regarding Tokyo's bid for World Heritage recognition of industrial sites built during Japan's colonial rule of Korea. Korea's foreign ministry said Choi Jong-mun, the ambassador for cultural and UNESCO affairs, will meet with his Japanese counterpart in Tokyo today. Seoul hopes to strike a deal with Tokyo over its campaign for the inclusion of 23 industrial facilities on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Seoul has been asking Tokyo to address the forced slave labor of some 60,000 Koreans at 7 of the 23 sites during the 1940s when Korea was under Japanese colonial rule. Korea is demanding that Japan represents history truthfully in the UNESCO records. Time is running out for Korea's remaining survivors of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement to receive a formal apology from Japan, and so they are taking matters into their own hands. They're taking legal action. 10 former victims and 2 family members of deceased victims plan to file a $20 million lawsuit in a U.S. court in July against the Japanese administration, Japanese firms, and a Japanese daily accused of breaching their human rights. The head lawyer in the case said the Kono and Murayama statement, both landmark apologies for Japan's actions during World War II, have repeatedly been either distorted or scaled down during each change of Japanese administration. However, the group is willing to withdraw its suit if the Japanese government issues an apology and compensates the victims. A group of former victims failed previously in the year 2000 to convince a U.S. district court that sexual enslavement was a crime against humanity. 2 South Koreans detained in North Korea have been sentenced to life in prison by the regime. North Korea's state-run Korean Central Television reported Tuesday that Kim Guk-gi and Choi Chun-gil were charged with spying on the regime under South Korean orders and have been sentenced to life of hard labor. Pyongyang first announced it had arrested the 2 men in March, accusing them of working as spies for Seoul's National Intelligence Service at China's border city of Dandong. Currently, 2 more South Korean nationals, a missionary and a university student, are still detained in the north. The United Nations has officially opened a field office in Seoul just an hour ago. It will be in charge of monitoring human rights abuses in North Korea. The opening ceremony for the office was attended by UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Zaid Ra'ad al-Hussein and Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se. The office was set up as a result of a report released by the UN's Commission of Inquiry last year, but it's expected to worsen inter-Korean relations as North Korea has slammed its opening, calling it an unpardonable provocation. Korea recorded its highest savings rate in almost 2 decades in the first quarter of the year as households in Korea kept a tight rein of the spendings in these unpredictable economic times. Our Shin Se-min reports.
Koreans are tightening up their belts and putting their money into savings. The central bank and government data show that Korea's total savings rate reached its highest in 17 years in the first quarter of this year, up 1.5 percentage points from the same period last year. The rate has been steadily picking up the pace in the recent years after it plunged to 31% in 2002. The total savings rate includes all households, corporate, and the government figures. The increase in savings was driven mostly by households, while the government has saved less and less over the past 3 consecutive years. The low increase in income and a slow-growing economy are just a few of the reasons why Koreans are keeping their wallets closed. Experts say increased savings may be a good sign in the long run, but it's just not a right fit for the current economy.
Saving money allows for spending in the future, but the economy needs a boost now with more consumption and investments.
Last year, Korea logged 3.3% economic growth, but the forecast for this year looks fuzzy, with many forecasting the growth to be in the low 3% range. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Shifting gears now, millions of people from around the world have been flocking to Milan for this year's World Expo. The Korean pavilion is enjoying great popularity, and this week Korean officials are putting in even greater efforts into raising awareness about everything Korea has to offer. Our Na Young-kyung files this report from the Italian city.
Korea's traditional tune resonates throughout the Sempione Park in central Milan. A night before Korea Day at this year's World Expo, a diverse set of performances took place in front of the symbolic Arch of Peace. This plaza is about 12 kilometers away from the actual expo venue, but it's the perfect place to attract and please the eyes and ears of the locals.
I didn't know about pansori, but I found it similar to Italian vocal music. I also realized Korea's b-boying style is different from what we see here. It was amazing.
I knew a little bit about Korea, but tonight I got to know many new things, including Korea's sports, music, and food. It was energetic, passionate, and the part with the instruments was touching.
The vivid colors of Korea's traditional costume hanbok mesmerized the crowds, while a K-pop b-boying crew immersed visitors in Korean culture. Some might question why cultural performances when the expo theme is food, but there's a reason.
We wanted to show the dynamic side of Korea and its traditional beauty as well. Combining these types of cultural performances makes sense because Korean food, or hanshik, originates from tradition.
It's a chance for those not yet familiar with Korea to get to know the country better and explore many different dimensions of Korea's deep-rooted culture.
On the following day, an official ceremony for the National Day of Korea will take place at the Expo, where around 200 officials from Korea and Italy will gather to highlight Korea's creativity and innovation in the global food sector. 나현경, Arirang News, Milan.
We've come to the end of our newscast. Thank you so much for watching. Do join us at 10 p.m. Korea time for more.